on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free.
Well, good evening. Welcome back to Strategic Insights. Yes, we are here again. I don't know. It seems like we're more off than on, but that's the way life goes. And to make things even more exciting tonight, we have Gary here only by audio. His camera decided to take a vacation at the last moment. Either that or, it just went to the great camera place in the sky. We don't know. We just don't know. So
not just that, but I wanted to practice in case I ever get a job on radio.
Well, that's not a bad thing. I worked in radio for a number of years. Always felt that I had a face made for radio. So yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea. So yeah, we will do our best to keep you informed and maybe even entertained tonight with our topic of choice. That Gary's finally coming clean with all the rejection he's suffered all these years, and going to tell you how to overcome all of that, even though you can't see his face.
Yeah, I got real problems. I was addicted to the hokey pokey, the dance, but I turned myself around.
Well, there you go. So any of you that have that particular problem with certain physical tremors or twitches that might be caused by too much dancing, Gary's got the answer for you.
There we go.
See? Well, I can turn any bad joke around. How about that?
Well, I was looking at an ad before for burial plots.
Oh, this ought to be good.
Burial plots, that's the last thing I'll ever need. What do I need? They're showing me that.
Okay, absolutely. Oh man. So you suggested this topic and I acquiesced because I couldn't think of anything better. So I'm going to let you launch in and once again, those of you that are tuning in a little late, we are here tonight. I'm here. Gary's here by audio only. So you'll just have to imagine him. Just, have that face in your mind as we do the program tonight.
There you go. Wait, what about Marie? Is she watching?
Marie is with us. Yes, Scott and Lisa.
Oh, okay, so we could start then.
Jackie's on. So we have our core group with us tonight. So yeah, I mean, let's launch into this topic of rejection. I think it's something that every single one of us is probably pretty familiar with, wouldn't you say?
Well, everyone has experienced rejection. I don't know of anyone that I never met anyone that has never either experienced it or at least they felt it, whether it was real or not.
Right.
Because I've heard of celebrities that have had everything, and people pull at them and they write them. They're the center of attention, but they feel rejected because they don't really know if people like them for who they are or for their fame and money. And that's why I've heard from read interviews where that's where some of them even get into addiction because they start to feel rejection, even though it might not even be real or it might be.
Okay.
So I think it's something everyone has dealt with the issue isn't so much the rejection. The issue is how do we respond to rejection.
Right.
What I've struggled with is internalizing it and allowing it to change how I think about myself.
Mm.
And then when I come into a social situation, I'm already thinking, oh, people don't want me there. They don't like me.
Yeah.
When it's actually my own thoughts about myself, because rejection is one of the most powerful experiences to change the way that you think about yourself and other people.
Yep.
Is
Yeah.
that your experience too?
Oh, sure. I mean, my goodness, you know, before I understood, you know, what was happening, you know, I would just basically crawl into the fetal position and cry myself to sleep.
Oh, boy, you know, what about my mother? She told me that she only liked me as a friend. That was real.
Oh my. All right. You know, you got to stop channeling Rodney Dangerfield. All right. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, it's we joke, right? We jest, but it is a serious topic. It when you're feeling as if people are not accepting you, not valuing you or what you say, that's painful. And again, you know, we've all experienced it at certain times. You know, you go back to even, you know, elementary school, right? You're in kindergarten for the first time, you're trying to make friends. And, you know, if you, for whatever reason, aren't viewed as part of the cool group, you know, you are immediately ostracized and picked on and laughed at and all of that sort of thing. And so it just, I think that begins a process of expectation, you know, where, you know, it looks like no matter where I go, people are just, they're not going to be friendly. So, you know, I am going to have a huge wall. I'm going to, you know, basically push people away before they get a chance to do it first. You know, so yeah, it can go way back to the earliest years of our lives.
Yeah, even, you know, so many people have been, you know, have fathers that are out of the picture.
Yeah.
When I was a teacher, I used to interview, you know, do the initial interviews for families.
Yeah.
And this was in New York City. I don't know how it is in other places. But I stopped asking about the father because every time I'd sort of get a look, you know, like, we don't know where, he's not involved, don't even ask, you know. So I got to the place I didn't even ask anymore, unless they told me there was a father involved, which was less and less likely. I got to a place I wasn't even going to ask. And you saw, even at a young age, how that affected kids. You know, runaway fathers that never cared.
Yeah, sure. Right. It's a very sad situation, and it has a very, I think, long-lasting effect that I don't know that a lot of people really look at that or they appreciate that. They just realize that they've grown up with a huge hole in their heart and look to fill it without really, I think, recognizing what the source of that was, unless they, you know, choose to go to therapy or, you know, end up hooking up with ministries such as we have, or the fields, you know, where they're able to really identify where it all stems from. But it's extremely painful and very common, as we're saying. So what other pearls of wisdom have you for us here?
Well, you could see, even, you know, during my years in church, Mother's Day is like a time of rejoicing and joking and celebrating. And Father's Day is always a time of people weeping at the altar and being broken.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's true. My goodness.
So you said that it leaves a hole, but it changes how you think about yourself. You know, if even your father never cared about you, you could reason, even at a young age, well, it must have been my fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know, little kids, that's how they think. You know, or if he left, it must have been because of me.
Mm.
And it absolutely brings in not only a sense of rejection, but what I see is it releases a demonic spirit of it, rejection, often the trauma of it.
Yeah.
And people can carry around that spirit.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's really because when you've experienced rejection over an extended period of time, whether it started as a child or something that occurred later in life, just the mere fact that you're carrying the wound without ever really dealing with it, that's a place of darkness that abides in us. And usually in that situation, there's been no forgiveness, there's been no release. So in that case, it's very easy for the enemy to basically partner with that and bring the person even further away from resolving it, because now that whole thing is being empowered by the enemy in a very real way. And man, it's just devastating to have that level going on in somebody's heart and life. It's just amazing.
And once you internalize it, now you take it out of your head. I mean, I've done this for years. This is something I struggle with for years and years, even if I was in ministry.
Sure.
I take the thoughts of how I feel about myself, and now I'm putting it in everyone else's head. You don't like me. You didn't say hello purposely.
Right.
But people, it turned out, didn't even see me or whatever, and I'd be mad that somehow I put an intention in the head that wasn't there, or feeling, or I put thoughts in people's heads. It's called in psychology projection.
Right.
But I see it so often, and I've done it myself. Right away I'm assuming I'm rejected. And when you act that way, people pick up on that. And then they actually, many times, do reject you because they don't want to deal with that whole thing, their whole rejection syndrome, and have to try to tiptoe around you.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, I think that's accurate. That we become really our own worst enemy without realizing it, by creating this buffer zone around us, because we're not going to let people in. We're not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's always I'm on guard against this, and because I know people are going to do it. They're going to reject me. They're going to speak evil of me or badly of me or whatever, and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not because necessarily the person wanted to do it, but I've just seen it happen where the person struggling with rejection, as you're mentioning, they behave in such a way that people they'll reject them because they can't deal with the issue in that person, and so it just reinforces. It's just like, it's a horrible catch-22 situation that people can get into. And it's whew, man, I remember those days, and I don't want to go back. Yep.
And like I was saying before, it's a demonic spirit where people are at the point where they need deliverance many times.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times, it's true that just knowing the truth will set you free.
Right.
Just hearing the truth about how God feels of you, it changes you.
Yeah.
But many times people, there's still that spiritual stronghold, where it becomes so powerful. The classic thing in church is there are people, they go to church, The second the service ends, they run out the door. The second. They don't wait, they'll knock you over. And then they leave the church. And when you ask why, oh, nobody was friendly. Nobody cared about me in that church. Nobody likes me over there. But it's the second the door, the service ended, they would go running. And it's almost like setting up a scenario. Years ago, this is way back in the 60s.
Wow.
We used to have a book called Games People Play, where people set up all these scenarios. And that's one of them. It's like a setup. You run out the door. You run from people.
Yeah.
And then you come up with the story. See, that's proof. No one likes me. No one said goodbye. No one asked me to go. Half the time, I don't even know people. They could come every week to church, and because they don't make themselves available,
yeah,
I don't even know them. I don't know their names a lot of times. And sometimes you try to reach out to people, and I was too busy. I don't answer the phone. I don't answer text.
Yeah.
But yet, take a stand. Take that same stand. They all hate me in that church.
Right.
That church that's not a loving place. What a setup.
Yeah. No, it's true. Exactly. And because of that, it really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and people just bounce from place to place because they're expecting to be rejected, and then they get rejected, or they perceive rejection even when it's not there. And that's really the worst of it is, people will interpret innocent statements or behaviors as if they are communicating a level of rejection toward them, and there is none there. It's just that they're expecting it. They're looking at life through the lens of being rejected, and so any word or any behavior can be interpreted as fulfilling that expectation, even if you never intended that. And so it's a really, really difficult situation.
And especially if you're a pastor or in ministry,
Woo!
you become the target so often.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think too that, folks who have a prophetic gifting of any kind, I shouldn't say for some reason, I know why, but folks like that really have difficulty with rejection. Because speaking prophetically, you're really putting yourself out there, even if you are not doing it in an overtly grandiose way. You know how people will do the whole "thus saith the Lord" thing, right? Even if you're simply trying to share on a very low-key level, something that you feel the Lord has shown you, you're putting yourself out there. I know, that you learn not to do that at some point, but especially in the beginning, you're very sensitive about whether or not you got it right, whether or not, people are going to receive what you say. And in organizational settings, if people don't know how to function prophetically within the environment or the culture of that particular church organization, then it's very likely they're going to be rejected, because they're perhaps not going to present that word in a manner that can be accepted by leadership or by others that are responsible there. So it's a minefield, for prophetic people, especially, as I say, in the beginning, as you're learning how to function in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times, if you disagree with someone's dream interpretation,
oh no,
or don't receive their words, or question it, you can get really lashed out at. You know, when
Yeah.
really the essence of the prophetic is humility.
Yeah.
Because if you're not humble, I mean, and that's what happened. People put out, even the big time prophetic ministries, we said this a million times, but they put out these big prophetic words. The economy is going to crash in September.
Yeah.
And you sell the book. And then when it doesn't happen, they won't come back and say, you know, I was wrong. Never. In all my years as a Christian, I haven't seen it once.
Yeah.
The only thing they'll say is, you see, because of my word, it didn't happen because I got people to pray. It's always the same excuse.
Yeah.
And who knows, that could be sometime. But I never once in my life seen anyone just say, well, you know, I'm wrong, and still feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
People get really hurt and wounded if you don't agree with them. So what happens is, it's like people won't even confront them because it becomes like a source of intimidation. I'm afraid to say I don't agree because now I know I'm going to pay a price.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. You know, being able to talk about things and recognize that, you know, we all have a different perspective, and not feel threatened by that, because that's really what's happening. You know, when you share something that you feel the Lord's given you and it's not received, or maybe it's corrected by somebody, you know, that's something that you take ownership of that thing that you're saying, right? Even though you know you're not supposed to. It's like, okay, this is what I feel the Lord's showing me. Here it is. You know, what do you think? You know, but when you're learning, it feels so real. You know, the revelation that you feel that you're getting from the Lord, it just seems like, wow, this is it. Wow, this is powerful. God's really showing me something amazing here. And you share it in certain circles or certain contexts, and people kind of look at you like you got two heads, or that, you know, somehow you just, you know, released a heresy of some kind, or who knows what, you know, or they felt the need to basically correct your theology and whatever it was you said, you know, and all you're trying to do is, you know, share something that, you know, you're feeling, you know, is a word from the Lord. And so not understanding how to separate yourself from the word, you take personally any kind of non-acceptance of what you're saying, and it's perceived as rejection. And so again, you know, for those who are prophetic in any way, that's a huge issue that needs to be looked at and dealt with, so that you can actually be useful to the Lord in sharing stuff.
I remember when I first became a pastor, this was like, I became a full-time pastor in 1999, so it's almost 20 years.
Wow.
19 years. But I remember going to the prayer meeting, you know, like, and there was a lot of pastors there.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we're going to call up all the pastors, come up. And I didn't go up. And I had the thought in my mind, that thing of rejection. Oh, no, they only want the real pastors to go up.
Oh.
And I didn't go up, and I heard the voice of the Lord. He said, if you're going to have that attitude, I won't be able to use you. Boy, did I turn around fast when I heard that. Because that's true, that false humility. I know you've spoken about that. Maybe you could talk a little, because the false humility takes the place of people think that walking around beating themselves up and saying how worthless they are makes them humble.
Yeah.
And I know I heard you talk about that in the past, the false humility.
Really? I don't remember.
Stop being so humble.
Exactly. Oh no, I don't know anything about false humility. No, that was kind of my modus operandi for years, you know. Back in the 90s, you know, it was always not, just being unwilling to live out of who you really are, and because you don't feel good about yourself. That's really the issue. You don't feel good about yourself, so it's like self-rejection, really. You're rejecting who God says you are because you don't see it, you don't believe it. And when that is your perception of yourself, then nobody can honor you or acknowledge your gifting, your calling, because you don't see it. You may have heard God say it or show it to you, but you just can't believe that that's true because of all of your failings, your weaknesses, your problems, et cetera, and so you don't walk in the reality of those things. And yeah, it's tough. I like I said, I've been through that, and I don't want to ever go back. Thank you, Jesus.
That happened with Moses when God said, "You go to the Pharaoh and you tell him to let my people go."
Yeah.
And Moses came up with that false humility. Well, I can't speak to anyone. I can't do that. Send someone else. And the scripture said, the Spirit of the Lord burned against Moses. And I'm not saying in a New Testament context that God's anger will burn against you, but it's at the same time, it shows that's not something pleasing to God, that kind of false humility that says, I can't do anything. Don't ask me to do anything. I'm just a nothing, a nobody. I'm so humble. Let me watch. I'm going to kick myself. And,
yeah, it's crazy.
And it's just so prevalent, where people will, no matter what you ask a lot of people, no, not me. I can't do that. No.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, like I say, it's a rejection of your own new nature, your own true identity, in favor of what you have experienced of yourself, what you've seen of yourself. And yeah, it's a huge limitation in terms of what the Lord is able to then, do through us. So yeah, it's definitely a major problem. Yeah.
And look at, and you see that a lot even in spiritual leaders, even in the Bible. Look at King Saul. He felt rejected because everyone was lifting up David. Saul killed his thousands.
Yeah.
And David killed his tens of thousands. When David come back from battle, all the women be marching in the street singing. That's hot, right? You go walk when you come down the street, all the women come and make songs about you. And well, Saul didn't like that, and so he decided, we got to kill him. He went so far with that rejection that he said, we got to get rid of this person. He's a threat.
Yeah.
What's he a threat to? He's a threat to my ego. David had already proved himself that he was loyal. That he was a man of humility. He proved his loyalty.
Yeah.
But yet that doesn't seem to matter a lot of time. I see that's a typical scenario, and often in churches and ministry. Somebody becomes a little too popular or anointed, and they get spears thrown at them like David.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, that's really the spirit of rejection.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and it all stems from whatever negative perceptions that people have of themselves, whether based on others' treatment of them or their own experiences of failure in life. It just sets up an expectation that basically gets fulfilled, because listen, we live in a world where people are always going to say and do things that you can perceive as being rejecting, as hurtful. And when you expect it, or when you believe that that's all that you deserve, well, that's what you're going to get. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
And sometimes it could come from an unrealistic image that you make of yourself. I guess if you could feel so rejected that now you need everyone to tell you how wonderful you are. And anyone who doesn't praise you, oh, you preached and no one said that, or the pastor didn't tell you, oh, that was great. What? Oh, no, then they're mad and then they disappear.
Oh.
I mean, these are real scenarios. I don't know why I deal with it so much more in church than in other places.
You don't know why? Oh my
I don't know why.
goodness.
Why it comes up more among the people of God than it comes up in any other place.
Well, I mean, the devil's trying to keep God's people from being free in every way. And so it doesn't surprise me in the least. You know, well, at least now I know why you want us to tell you how great you did every night, you know, every time we do the dream show.
Oh, yeah. I got an image to make.
Exactly. Keep that rep going, huh?
And that's a real danger. You know, that's the other side of rejection. I feel rejected if I'm not always the center of attention, if someone else is stealing my thunder.
Yeah.
And you see that in leaders, and often in the church world, you just watch Christian TV, where, you know, they have to put a big picture of me as the center of everything. And I have to get my name out there. I got to promote myself. Everyone has to know my name.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not about, ministry is not about anyone knowing your name.
Sure.
It's about knowing the name of Jesus. If no one knows your name, then thank God.
Right.
That's even. Then you're doing things for the right purpose, out of love, rather than for fame and attention.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not trying to say that it's never appropriate to be known, because there are situations where God definitely has that as part of someone's destiny. But generally, you know, he wants to work out the kinks first before he puts us out there, because the more out there you are, the more responsibility you have, the more accountability you have for what you say and do, because now you're not just influencing a small group in a church or a home or whatever other situation you're in. Now, you know, you're out there in front of how many people, you know, thousands, could even be millions. So God's always going to work out the kinks. At least that's his plan. Those who get thrust into the limelight too early in their development usually crash and burn, because they don't know how to handle, you know, all that goes on in being in the spotlight. You know, so that's a whole nother issue there. We probably have talked about that as well at some point. But you know, the idea of overcoming rejection, right? I mean, that's really what we want to talk about. I think we've illustrated enough of the negative aspects of it and what it looks like and how to define it. So, you know, what have you learned about actually becoming free of this rejection spirit?
Well, one thing it was a quote from Bill Johnson, and he said that you can't afford to have a thought in your head about who you are that Jesus doesn't have in his head.
Yeah.
And I found I don't have that luxury to have a pity party, because I don't know about other people, but I can fall into a time of darkness, depression.
Sure.
If I see when those thoughts come.
Yeah.
And the thoughts are always going to come. You know, when something happens, you know, when you perceive something. And sometimes, many times, there is real rejection.
Yeah.
You know, people have something and they invite everyone but you is invited.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
And you can start getting those thoughts. The way I just decided I can't afford to have that without battling it, without, like it says in 2 Corinthians 10, casting it down, those vain imaginations, thoughts the enemy puts in my head, and then having to replace it with the knowledge of who God says that I am.
Exactly.
And I was preaching the last few weeks about David.
Mm-hmm.
And he was rejected by everyone you could imagine. His own family rejected him.
Yeah.
His spiritual father, King Saul, rejected him.
Hmm.
All the people of Israel rejected him. He told God, well, will my own people turn me into Saul if I don't run? He said, yeah, you better run. Then he went over to the Philistines, the enemy army, and he tried to join that army, and they rejected him. That's you're in a bad place when the devil doesn't want you in his army, right? That's a bad sign.
That is.
When you come to the devil and say, "I want to join your army," he says, "Next." You know you're in trouble.
Exactly.
And those closest to him, because they blamed him, because all the enemy, the Amalekites, came and carried away all the wives, children, their belongings. They burned down the city.
Yeah.
They blamed him. I mean, that to me is a make or break moment when you're really experiencing that kind of real rejection.
Sure.
But that was such a model to me, because he refused to give into it.
Mm-hmm.
It says, strengthen himself in the Lord, which means to me, he started to see who he truly is in God and who God really is in his life.
Right.
And that's been a model.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm totally free from all this stuff, but I'm free enough that I'm able to minister freedom to other people.
Mm-hmm. Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, that's key, that we recognize, okay, this can be dealt with, and we take the steps necessary to deal with it. We've learned, I think, that a large part of the rejection syndrome, I guess, if you want to call it that, it comes out of, it partners, really, rejection partners with the orphan spirit. And the orphan spirit is that spirit that keeps us separated from the Father by making us, or enticing us to believe that he doesn't care for us, that we're not important to him, he's not doing anything about the prayers that we've prayed, etc. Basically driving, or trying to drive a wedge between us and the Father. And until that issue is dealt with, till we really recognize that we are loved and fully accepted by him because of Christ, we're never going to be able to deal with human rejection, because we're still operating as if we're being rejected or have been rejected by the Father. So I think that's a huge foundational issue that really needs to be addressed if we're going to ever really be free.
And one thing with Jesus, I mean, there was no one in history more rejected than him. I mean, imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To be persecuted and no fault of his own at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do things to push people away. He just loved people and healed people.
Yeah.
And in spite of that, then they tried to kill him.
And
in the end, they did.
They did.
So every time it says he had to run for the hills, because the Pharisees, it says, they kept trying to kill him. They kept mocking him. Even as he hung on the cross, they said, well, if you're who you say you are, then come down.
Right.
Can you imagine that kind of, that's tormenting rejection. I mean, that's not just imaginary.
Yeah.
But yet he knew so clearly who he was and what his destiny was, that he loved people through it. And from the time I got saved, I've had to keep going back to that example over and over and over again.
Yeah. It's true. And of course, he had no doubt about his identity. He had no doubt about who he was and is. And that's the key. If we don't recognize how valued we are by the Father, how much he does care and love for us, and how he has brought us into this oneness with himself through Jesus, through the Holy Spirit, then when people do these things, when they say these things, it's like, oh, well, this is who I am. I am what these people are saying, or I am what they're doing to me in terms of rejecting me. I mean, we've had situations over the years where people that we had been, pretty good friends with, but maybe had lost touch with them on some level. We would find out they had major life events going on and never invited us. And so you kind of sit back and scratch your head. It's like, really? So all those years when we were friends, and now that we're not, it's like we don't exist. And that kind of stuff will jack with you unless you really understand that, well, you know what? I'm okay because Papa loves me, and and I don't have to worry about it if somebody forgot about me.
And even in that scenario, the opposite, where, I feel like I haven't called the person in all this time, and they're really mad at me. Now when I do call, they're going to start yelling. So now I'm afraid to contact people.
Oh.
Because now I have this whole scenario going on in my head.
Yeah.
Hey, this is how that's my modus operandi.
Oh.
How to deal with. I create scenarios in my head that haven't even happened.
Yeah.
And I have through my whole imagination that once I talk to them, they're going to say, you have some nerve to calling me after all this time. And I find when I do, people are always happy to hear from me.
Right.
And I got this whole drama going on in my head.
Well, so here's the answer to that. Come up with the response. Figure it out. I'll do that sometimes on a totally different level where, I'll just all of a sudden start thinking about possibilities and kind of challenging myself. Okay, so what would I do if this happens? Or how would I respond if that happens? And so I'll engage in these thought experiments just to kind of figure out, well, what would I do? So, you can do that with all of your little dramas in there and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. If they do that, I'm going to tell them a bad joke and make them laugh. There you go.
But the problem is that I invent things in my head. I invent scenarios that most likely will never happen. But once you do that, it feels so real.
Yeah.
So like you said, you could practice what to say if that did happen. But it's so rare that what I imagine is going to happen actually happens.
Yeah. But hey, you're prepared for it.
Yeah, but I wait so much. One time the Lord spoke to me and said, imagine if you had all the time back that you spent worrying about things that never happened.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. No, I understand that. When you have a conflict with somebody, and this is a little off topic, but I think it fits anyway. When you have a conflict with someone where, there's like this ongoing disagreement, or just, you just feel like there's tension. I don't know about you, but I for years, I would have these, mental arguments where I was actually with this person and I would be making my case and arguing
that's me too.
Right. And one day the Lord told me, he said, this is second heaven warfare that you're doing. I'm like, excuse me? And yeah, he said, this is warfare from the second heaven, where the enemy is trying to rob you of the thoughts that I want you to have by keeping you focused on these human level thoughts and your, arguments and debates and all this sort of thing. And man, once I saw that, I was like, all right, I'm done with that. I am done with that thing. But I think that, when you are still working through a rejection kind of an approach to life, that is a response that you have when you feel like someone is not agreeing, especially if they're in leadership. I know I did this a lot with leaders because, God was showing me stuff that they didn't understand or they disagreed with. And I was like, oh my God, I'd be in there in my mind, just arguing over and over again, instead of just letting it go and say, you know what, Lord, it's not my problem. But, when you're still kind of working through the whole rejection issue, again, we talked about this, right? People's disagreement can often feel like rejection. And so, anytime we experience rejection from somebody and we can't immediately put it to rest, that's an invitation from the Lord to dialogue and to explore what's still there, what's still going on in my heart that makes me stirred up about this particular rejection. Okay. Because there can be layers, there can be different scenarios, that need to be healed on their own, as opposed to just one blanket dealing with rejection. Because most times rejection occurs out of specific scenarios. And so it can happen that way. So I feel like that is such a wise approach that I've learned over the years. So anytime I feel that sort of rejection, any kind of rejection from someone, and I can't just immediately say, well, it is what it is. Thank you, Papa, that you love me. There's something there that's still sticking and hurting. That's an invitation. Becoming aware of our state of mind, of our emotional state and spiritual state is a true mark of maturity, so that we can engage with Him in whatever things are coming to light, so that we can get free of that. It's just, I just love how He does that. He uses all these things to highlight something that has not yet been healed or we've been set free from. So, little nugget there for you.
Another thing I like, that David said, but in the Psalm, he said, "Why so downcast, O my soul? Put your trust in God." And I've had to do that many a night. Right here. Because sometimes your emotions can get overwhelmed with stuff like that. Yeah. Sometimes there's real hurtful, deep rejection,
Sure.
beyond other issues. Yeah. But, people, have spouses that decide to leave them for someone else. Real strong things that can totally wreck you. And what David said, he said, I speak to my, your soul is your mind and your emotions.
Yep.
And he said, I refuse to let my negative emotions take control, override my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's a real battle, but you got to stand in that.
Yeah.
And tell your emotions, I'm not giving into these negative thoughts anymore that tell me I'm worthless.
Sure.
And I'll never love again because it'll just keep happening again. And, all the things that come out of rejection.
Right.
There's some point where you have to be like David, and I do it. I speak to my emotions and my mind.
Yeah.
I just can't, like I said before, I can't afford to entertain that negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it becomes what you were saying before, all these conversations in my head.
Right.
And I think that's what the scripture meant, or at least partly meant by vain imagination.
Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately what you're saying is that you learn to reject your rejection.
Well, or at least battle it.
Yeah.
Not tolerate it.
Exactly.
I'm not there yet. I don't want to sit here and present myself as something I'm not.
Right.
But I've come a tremendously long way from where I was.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's really key, is that, you recognize rejection for what it is. It's an attack on you and your identity by someone, whether purposefully or not. You know, and you've got to recognize that whatever is being communicated to you, whatever that negative thing is that's being communicated to you about you through their words or actions, is simply not the truth. You know, of course, if you did something to earn that rejection, then you need to take ownership of it. But, you know, when it is just simply something that people do because of their own issues, you know, that's where you reject the meaning behind it. What, you know, is implied in that rejection, you've got to reject that because it does not speak to your true identity, who you are as a son or daughter of the Father. And by making that choice, right, you're making a choice that says, I'm not going to believe that. Instead, I'm going to replace that negative junk with the truth. And of course, the truth is what he says. And that's the warfare battle that we all deal with. It's making a decision as to what we're going to focus on, what we're going to believe, so that we can be set free from the lies and the negativity. It's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. And then there's, you know, even the fear of rejection, where people will
Sure.
never form relationships. There's people that want to get married, but they'll never take a risk of being rejected.
Yep.
And so years go by, and
Mm-hmm.
you know,
yeah,
and because of that fear,
sure,
you know, which is a little different than what we were saying before. The fear of rejection is, you know, if I do this, people will reject me, or they will, you know, I won't be accepted. I don't want to look like a fool.
Right.
And you can't do supernatural ministry if you have that fear of looking like a fool and being rejected.
Yeah.
That's the total opposite. Because
exactly.
What if the person doesn't get healed?
Right.
Now everyone's going to think I look stupid, so I'm not going to pray for anyone.
Exactly.
I'm not going to give a word. I might be wrong. So
right.
I can't afford to people not to like me.
Sure.
That has to be overcome for anyone who wants to have a meaningful ministry.
Exactly. So my advice simply, if you're going to do, you know, go out there and do supernatural ministry, wear a clown costume. That way you're ahead of the game.
Oh, there you go. Well, one time I went to the psychiatrist's office. The psychiatrist said, "What's your problem?" I said, "Nobody wants to talk to me." He said, "Next."
Oh, wow. That's rough, man. Let me tell you. When you can't get your shrink to talk to you.
Oh, boy.
I mean, you get no respect. I
went to the dentist office. I said, "What do I do about my yellow teeth?" He told me to wear a brown necktie.
Yeah, that's true. That, you know, you might as well color coordinate at that point. Wow.
Just to stop me, maybe we have the big event coming up this coming Saturday. Right?
The big event?
Monthly.
Oh, yes, the event that makes an impact. This is true. We have impact on Saturday, folks. Hopefully you're well, it's not on November 11th. Look at that. I got the wrong promo up, so forget that. I know, it's just typical.
It's out of control.
We're out of control, absolutely. But yeah, Saturday we are gathering again for our monthly Impact Extravaganza in Cranford. If you want to come and just get whacked in the Lord and encounter amazing, you know, revelations and just, you know, his presence and love and all that good stuff. That's basically all we do. We just come together and say, "All right, Lord, here we are. What's on your mind?"
And how would people sign up or get more information?
Well, I'll give them your phone number. Is that all right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can.
Triple dog dare
you triple dog dare me. All right, I hear you. Yeah, you can go to myimpact.com, but you have to spell impact with a K. Otherwise, you'll go somewhere else and you won't be able to get the tickets. So it's myimpact.com, and it's $25, but it is worth every penny, if I do say so myself, and I do. So
And we have a special promotion this month, right? The spring special that the first 10 people get free dinner with Scott. They could take them out to the restaurant of their choice. Like
Well,
the first 10 people that register.
I was not aware of that, but if that's the case, then you better hit the website quick because that's going to go fast. Let me
Oh
tell
boy,
you.
dinner with Scott. Imagine that.
Let me tell you.
Where do I sign up?
Yeah, right.
But I think there was $100 per person limit, right?
Oh, well, see now.
That's what I heard.
I don't know.
Maybe you could put Scott on to clear that up.
Yeah. So let me just go ahead and put the website here in our chat for those who are interested in finding out more about Impact and where and when it is. My Impact. No, see, I can't even spell here. My goodness. IMPAKT.com. All right, that should do it. No, what are you doing? My iPad is really annoying at times. There you go. That's the link. So check it out. Well, we're done here, buddies. We got to stick a fork in us. Sorry for the lack of camera tonight. We don't know what Gary did to his camera, whether he just spit on it too much and it died. We'll have to see if we can get that fixed for next week. But at least you were able to speak and we could hear you clearly. That was a blessing.
Oh yeah. If you would have had the video up, you'd have millions of people watching from all over the world if they would have seen my picture.
Well, I know. And
Billions.
Bill, thank you, Carl Sagan. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. We'll look forward to getting back with you to, I guess, next week for another episode of Strategic Insights. Just hang in there another couple minutes and we'll be on the air again with the Dream Interpretation Show. So have a great night and say goodnight, Gary.
And tell Marie not to tune out. We got the big dream show coming up.
Absolutely. All righty, guys. Bless you.